приятели! Имаме огромното удоволствие и чест Даниеле Ганзер да говори пред нашия канал. И за да не губим повече време, направо ви представяме интервюто, така както го записахме в началото на седмицата. Dear friends, today we have the opportunity to talk with Dr. Daniele Ganzer, who is a Swiss historian. As you know, we have the opportunity and the pleasure to be publishers of his books, The Secret Armies of NATO, and I think that this interview is a great opportunity to hear the point of view of a Swiss historian on our contemporary history. Good day, Dr. Ganzer.
Hello, Dr. Sivilov. Thank you very much for inviting me to talk to you. It's very nice that the Swiss historian and the historian from Bulgaria can exchange thoughts and ideas.
Definitely. I want to start with your book. It was really great pleasure reading it and later introducing it to Bulgarian public. What is very interesting is that most of the people, I think, don't understand that this book is historical research. It's based on documents. And when I started to say, okay, we publish this because it's a relevant study, it's not some kind of conspiracy theory, it was not quite understandable for people. So could you please tell us about how did you decide to make this book? And it's really popular. I know that you have a lot of publications in different languages, and in Bulgaria, although it's written a long time ago, it's published just now. So what's your explanation of all this?
Yeah, the book is on NATO Secret Armies, and this is the version that was now in 2025 published in Bulgaria by you. Thank you very much. I personally can't read it, you know, it's not the language I can read. I have published it in German. This is the version in German, which sold some 50,000 copies. Originally, I wrote it in English, so it's also available in English. That's always the same book. It was also published in French. This is the French version. It was also published in the Greek version. That's the Greek version. I obviously can't read Greek at all. This is the Turkish version. I can't read Turkish either. This is the Italian version. I can read Italian, so this is one I understand. It was also published in Spanish. This is the Spanish version. This is the Russian version. This I don't even know. I think Croatia.
Yeah.
There's a lot of books.
Yeah.
And it's all the same book. This is the Finnish version. I brought them all here to explain that that's all the same book. It's the same book. It's just different layouts. Put them here. Put the Bulgarian version here. And it all started with my PhD. I did my PhD in history in Switzerland. And I finished my PhD in 2001. So that's 24 years ago. And I said I want to research NATO secret armies because I was in contact with Noam Chomsky, a researcher in the United States. He was at the MIT. He's now very old.
Yeah.
But I visited him at the MIT in Boston, and I was asking him, what's an interesting research topic? I'm interested in secret warfare. And then Noam Chomsky said, well, it'd be good if somebody in Europe would cover Gladio, Operation Gladio, and NATO secret armies. Because a lot of the data is in German and a lot of the data is in Italian, and we don't speak Italian and we don't speak German in the US. We just don't understand.
Yeah.
And I said, oh, yes, I speak German, I speak Italian, I can read the records. And I was also in touch with William Bloom. William Bloom is a researcher in the United States who wrote the book Killing Hope.
Yeah.
And then Noam Chomsky and Bill Bloom, they linked me up to former CIA agents. And I was in the United States and I was visiting these secret agents. They worked for the CIA, but then they were retired. And then, I was given the address from one house to the other house. And I was
Wow.
just a young history student.
Yeah.
And I went to these CIA agents and I talked to them in their private house. And I did oral history. And I said, we had these NATO secret armies in Europe. And this is a topic I want to work on, and I'm fascinated by it. What did these secret armies do? And this is how it all started.
And was it easy to defend such a thesis in Switzerland? Because, it's a really controversial topic, and after all, you were able to finish it and to introduce it to the world. So it's a really good thing and a really great thing, in fact, because before that, no one ever talked about it openly like that.
Yes, it was possible to do this in Switzerland. I have to say, in Switzerland, we have had, a look on the Cold War, and I think that's interesting. Now,
Yeah.
I'm in Switzerland, you're in Bulgaria. I tell you how it was. We're about the same age, I guess.
Yeah.
I'm 52. Yeah, more or less same age.
Oh, I'm a little bit younger, but
Yeah,
almost.
but it doesn't matter. But
Yeah.
I just heard that your daughter is 18, so
Yeah.
I thought it's
Yeah.
going to be the same age. But we both have kids, and like when I was in Switzerland, when I was a teenager, what they told me is the Soviet Union is evil, and everybody in Eastern Europe is suppressed by the KGB. That it was a very short story, but
Yeah.
we thought everybody in Bulgaria, Romania, in Poland, everybody's suppressed. And what they told us is that in the West, we are aligned with the United States, and the United States is a force for democracy and for freedom. So we're on the good side, and there's no manipulation, nothing. Like it's just the freedom of the people in the countries where we live to express their wish, and if they want to vote for this party, they can. If they want to vote for that party, okay. That was the story I got when I was 15 or when I was 20, and I believed it. If people are being told the story, they believe it. And then in my book, NATO Secret Army, I found out that there was a problem in Italy. Italy had a very strong communist party, a very strong party. Like they had like 30% or more
Yeah.
in the parliament. And then the Americans were scared that Italian communists would become member of the government, like defense minister or prime minister or interior minister. And then they thought NATO would be weakened from within. If you have an Italian communist defense minister, he would then call Moscow and tell them all the secrets of NATO. So this was you obviously know it, but for those listeners who don't remember the Cold War, it really has to be repeated. It was a world in two blocks. There's the communist bloc and there was the capitalist bloc. And so in Italy, the communists, they had fought the fascists in the Second World War. So they were really respected, and a lot of Italians voted communists or they voted socialist. And so the CIA didn't want that the communists came into power. And what they did is in 1948, that were the first elections in Italy after the Second World War. Mussolini was dead, Italy fascism was defeated, Hitler was dead. So, it was the new time to create something new. They manipulated the elections in Italy in 1948. The CIA had been created in 1947, and the first job was not, to invade Vietnam. No, it was to manipulate the elections in Italy. And I didn't know, as a student, I was going, why do they tell us that everything is difficult in Bulgaria and everything is difficult in Poland and Czechoslovakia? Because the evil Soviet communists from Moscow, they don't let people choose what they want to do with their lives. And they tell us, in our side, everything is free. And then I find out it's not true. It's not true. They manipulated the elections in Italy. And as Switzerland, people who look on the map, they can see Switzerland is to the north of Italy. So, and
Yeah.
I was born in Lugano, which is the Italian-speaking part of Switzerland. So I was very interested what happened in Italy. Then I thought, okay, I understand the CIA didn't want the communists in power. Okay, they manipulated the elections. But it went further. Then I found out that there was a secret army in Italy called Gladio. And that's very strange. In a democracy, you should not have a secret army. You just shouldn't. It's not possible. You cannot say, we have a democracy, this is the army. Everybody knows how many people are in the army, how much money there is in the army. And then there is a secret army nobody knows about. It's not democratic, okay?
Yeah.
And so in 1990, the Italian Prime Minister Giulio Andreotti confirmed in Italy that there is a secret army. And in 1990, at the same time in Switzerland, there was a parliamentary investigation, and they confirmed that there was a secret army in Switzerland, in my native country. The secret army in Switzerland had the name P26, and in Italy it was Gladio. And then in Germany, they just had the reunification after the fall of the Berlin Wall. They also found out they had the secret army. It was called Stay Behind. And in Belgium also, and in France also, in Turkey also. So all this idea of Western Europe being transparent and democratic, it really collapsed in front of my eyes.
Yes, I understand you quite well because I'm studying the same period, and I've seen that most of the process, especially even if we look at the start of the Cold War, it's like a mirror world. You see something started like the McCarthyism in the United States, and we have the same process in the Soviet Union and most of the socialist countries, but with the different version. They are not chasing the communists, they're chasing just the people who are with different opinion. So you have put forth a really important question about the democracy and the right of the people to know everything about how they're governed and what happens around us. And at the same point, I know that you have a lot of problems when you are giving your speech around, for example, Germany, Austria. I don't know if you had this kind of problems in Switzerland. We had the kind of problem when we tried to present the book in Sofia University. Our booking of the hall was cancelled in the last moment, so we were not able to have the presentation. We will do it a little bit later, but in a different place. So in this case, do we live nowadays in free countries with freedom of speech, where you can speak about NATO secret armies? As I said, it was a real research based on documents.
It's not totally free, Dr. Sivilov. It's not totally free. We always have to fight for the freedom. That's, I think, the situation. And I think people know. People know. If a topic is sensitive, first of all, I want to say I'm very sorry that you have problems in Sofia presenting my book. So I'm sorry to cause problems. But it also happens in Germany. It also happens in Switzerland. Why? My research shows not only that NATO had secret armies. Okay, that's confirmed. The Supreme Allied Command of Europe, the SACEUR, confirmed this. And the Secretary General confirmed this. Giulio Andreotti, Prime Minister in Italy, confirmed this. This is beyond any question. It's like you can tick it off. Were there secret armies? Yes. And the second question is, did parliaments know in the different countries that these armies existed? The answer is no. Some parliamentarians were involved, but that's not okay. The entire parliament should be involved. Did journalists or academics like you and me, did like historians know that there were secret armies in the Cold War? No, we didn't know. It was a secret. So it's confirmed that it was like a double structure. One open and one secret. It's called the deep state. It really is the deep state. If there's a structure that Parliament doesn't know anything about, that you don't find in the accounting, in the official accounting of government spending, it's not there, but it exists. So that's not transparent. And when you say, do you have any problems? Yes, I have these problems. I have these problems when I talk about the deep state, because I explain to people that these secret armies were equipped with explosives. They were equipped with guns. They were equipped with communication equipment. And the traditional idea, and this is proven beyond any doubt, the additional idea was to have these secret armies. And when if in case of a Soviet invasion of Western Europe, so when the Russian troops, if you want, or the Soviet troops would cross the German border, go from East Germany into West Germany, and then move into, say, France or Belgium or Spain or Switzerland or Italy, just the NATO countries, that then you would have like a guerrilla force who would fight in the back of the Soviet occupying force. They would blow up bridges, or they would help pilots who were shot down. And that's the classical stay behind. And former CIA Director William Colby wrote in his memoirs, yes, we set up these stay behind armies in case of a Soviet invasion. But, Dr. Sivilov, if it was just for the Soviet invasion, then these secret armies should never have been operational, never, because there was no Soviet invasion.
Yes.
And I can always say, I was born in 72, so now it's easy to say there was no Soviet invasion of Western Europe. Why you crazy guys thought there would be? I mean, I always have to put myself into the mind of somebody in Germany or somebody in Italy or in Switzerland. And I think they really were scared that there could be a Soviet invasion of Western Europe. So I don't say they did it out of being evil. I think some of them did it because they feared a Soviet invasion, and they said, let's have a guerrilla network ready. And the CIA and the MI6 trained them and gave them the explosives, etc. But the problem, Dr. Sivilov, is if you have a secret army, the Soviet invasion doesn't come, then the secret army can use the explosives and create terrorism in the country, for instance, in Italy, and blame the communists. But the elected communists, not the Soviet invasion, the communists that are parliamentarians who were elected. And that is a strategy which is called strategy of tension. You create tension, you create chaos, and you use false flag. You say the other one did it, but he didn't do it. You just blame it on him. This is a very evil thing to do. And in my book, I write that this happened. I say in Italy, they carried out terrorist attacks. For instance, let's take a specific date. We always, as historians, we always want a date. So 1969, after the flower power period, during the Vietnam War, in 1969, in December, shortly before Christmas, let's go to Milano, which is a big city in Italy in the north. It's very well known for the Dome of Milano. It's a very, very big church, Catholic church. And in this city, there was a terrorist attack. People were blown apart in a bank. They put a bomb in a bank. People were blown apart. So the whole city was in shock. It was called Piazza Fontana, the terrorist attack of Piazza Fontana. That's the name in Italy. People in Italy know it. Everybody around the world doesn't know it, but people in Italy remember.
Definitely.
And now, today, we know that this terrorist attack in Piazza Fontana was carried out by right-wing extremists of Ordine Nuovo. And we also, Ordine Nuovo is just a right-wing extremist group in Italy. Young guys, young fascists. And they got the explosives from NATO and the arms caches, okay? So what we're talking here in this book, which is now published in Bulgaria, is highly, highly sensitive. I understand that people say, oh, no, we don't want a presentation at university, because NATO doesn't want to talk about it, and the CIA, they don't want to talk about it.
Yes, but at the same point, we understand that if it had happened once, it might be repeated again, so we should speak about it. When I listened to you, I was thinking, did you made in your research, or because I didn't saw anything in the book about it, but about the connections of the left-wing guerrilla groups in Western world, like Red Army faction in Western Germany, or Red Brigades in Italy, because they did a lot of attacks, but were all these attacks done by them? Were they just blamed in some way?
You know, I think in Italy, for instance, we had Brigate Rosse, were the Red Brigades. And there was a very interesting moment in the 1970s when Aldo Moro was prime minister. So he was the Italian prime minister. And as I said before, the communists were never in the executive. They were strong in parliament, but they were never in the executive. So Aldo Moro said, I want to make a historical compromise. I want to bring the Italian communists into power. And now, you know, I'm not a communist. I never voted communist. In Switzerland, there was no communist party. So there's no, people say, oh, maybe Daniele Ganser is a communist. No, I'm not. But if the communists are very strong in parliament, they have 30%, you should have them in your government. If it's a democracy, you should, that's the same thing now in Germany. They have the AfD, they have 20%, and they say, okay, you can be in parliament, but we'll not have you in the government. It's not a good idea. You should have people express their will, they vote for the parties, and if the Italians vote for the communists should be allowed to have at least one position in government. So coming back to Aldo Moro then wanted to bring the communists into the government. He himself wasn't a communist. He was from the Christian Democrats. And he was killed. And so the Brigate Rosse, which were extreme left terrorists, they were blamed, but I think they were infiltrated. So it's very hard to prove. But people in Italy are all confused, and still today, people are all confused. If I tell them the stories, they say, what? The CIA manipulated the elections in Italy? And what? In Switzerland, there was a secret army? And what? The communists were not allowed to come into the government? And what? There were terrorist attacks? It's really outside the normal area of things we talk about. It's not being taught at schools in Switzerland. It's not being taught at university in Switzerland. I guess in Bulgaria, it's not being taught at school. It's very specific.
Yes,
and
it's not.
It's not, yeah.
What do you think about the right to know? Are there other topics that nowadays it's not possible to speak about? Because definitely this one about the secret armies of NATO is one of the things. But I'm afraid, because when we make our YouTube channel, we have a lot of things to think when we start making our headlines, for example, because they would be censored at some point. So
yeah, that's the problem. It's also for me. I also have a YouTube channel, and you sometimes think, will they delete my YouTube channel? But I speak about, when I have my research, I present my data. Like I can tell everybody, even if they have never heard of NATO secret armies, I can guarantee them they existed. I know it. I researched it for 4 years. I did nothing else. I got up in the morning. I just researched. I went to bed at 8, like every day for 4 years. I was a PhD student. I had nothing else to do. I was in different countries. I read in different languages, but I'm sure, yes, NATO had secret armies. And I'm sure these secret armies were set up by CIA and MI6. And I'm 100% sure parliaments were not involved. So it's not democratic. So it's the deep state. Now, people can go and say, are you sure that these secret armies carried out terrorist attacks? There I say, I think so, but it's open for academic debate, okay? If other research say, no, it had nothing to do with the secret armies, I'm fine, we can discuss it. But I still think, like today, if you look, for instance, at the war in Ukraine, people think it started with the Russian invasion on 24 February 2022. I think this invasion is illegal. Russia has no right to invade in Ukraine. But I think it started much before. It started in 2014 with the overthrow of the democratically elected government of President Yanukovych. So when we look at Ukraine from Switzerland, then I look very intuitively at February 20, 2014, and I say, oh, there were snipers shooting policemen and demonstrators on the Maidan in Kiev. And I'm like, this is really interesting. This is exactly what I've seen in my book. In Italy and in Turkey and in other places, it's that you create chaos, and blame it on somebody else. It's called false flag terrorism. And I'm not sure how the debate in Bulgaria is, but here in Switzerland, first of all, people think there was peace in Ukraine, and then suddenly on one day, Putin turned mad and invaded. And they think the war started in 22. Now it's go, no, you missed it. It started in 2014. So the war in Ukraine now in 2025 is 11 years old. It's not like 3 years old. Then people go, are you sure, Daniele? And yes, I'm sure. I'm a historian. I know. I researched this. And I tell them it was 8 years of civil war, okay, in the country. And people in Switzerland go, oh, I didn't read about that, or nobody talked about it. And I know, yeah, it was not a big story in Switzerland. And then I say, and guess what? On 2014, I think there were snipers who shot both the demonstrators on the Maidan and the Berkut, who are the police. And I looked at the data, and the snipers, there were in Hotel Ukrainia and on the conservatory. So these are two buildings that were controlled by the protest movement. But what they did is they blamed it on the government, on Yanukovych. I don't think he did it. I think Yanukovych was blamed in the false flag operation. So, that's February 2014. But it's exactly the same material that people will find in this book. And so if you ask me, is it still important today? Yes. Is it still relevant for our historic analysis of Europe? What is happening in Europe? Yes. And is it difficult to speak about this? I can say yes. In Switzerland, in Germany, it's difficult. I don't know about Bulgaria. Maybe you speak about the 2014 shooting in Bulgaria. I don't know. How's the debate in Bulgaria?
Yeah, since we are closer to Ukraine and we have a lot of different ties with Ukraine, a lot of people have studied there. We have a lot of people from Ukraine who came to Bulgaria. So we knew about the Maidan in 2014 and the real situation. We had at some point this different glimpse of what was happening in Ukraine and that there was a civil war, and a lot of people knew it. But after all, if you look at the mainstream media and the politicians, they never tried to explain that the war started in 2014. I'm thinking in the same way as you, absolutely the same way, because we were seeing this it was December 2013 with a colleague. We were in Moscow, and then we saw it was a diplomatic seminar, and there were historians from the university in Kharkov and from the university in Lvov, and they were so angry to each other that it was even before the Maidan. They were going to fight on this conference. It was strange, and I was absolutely stunned. What is happening? And then the Maidan started, and it was an awful thing to see people in one country to have this civil war killing each other. It was really
brutal.
Yeah, we know it, but at the same point, it's not possible to manifest this kind of point of view in the university, absolutely, and in mainstream media. It's very difficult to be presented there and to have this in front of the general public.
But Dr. Sivilov, isn't it interesting? You are in Bulgaria, I'm in Switzerland. You are a historian, I'm a historian. We know what we research, but we both come to the conclusion it is very difficult to bring this to the public attention. Because I have, for instance, a situation when I say, 2014, that was a false flag operation to overthrow Yanukovych. And I say a false flag operation is very simple. And I give an example. I say, when the CIA bombed Cuba in 1961, that was the Bay of Pigs invasion. Yeah. Okay, Fidel Castro was in power. You know it, but people who don't know the story. The CIA tried to overthrow Fidel Castro in Cuba. So they took American planes and dropped bombs on Cuba. But they painted the logo of the Cuban Air Force on the plane. So they just wrote, "This is a Cuban plane on an American plane. This is false flag."
Yeah.
And Fidel Castro, he shot it down and he saw the plane and he said, he was like smiling, going, "Oh yeah, gee, you even painted the Fuerzas Armadas Revolucionarias on the plane, but it's your plane from America." Yeah. So I know, and you know, that false flag terrorism exists. It's not like, no, I can't imagine. We know it exists. But even if you know it exists, and it's very hard, I mean, that's why I'm so happy that you translated the book into Bulgarian. It will help people. I mean, it's structured into different countries. There's on Turkey, there's on Italy, there's on Belgium, there's on Germany. Even it opens our mind. I mean, that's really the idea with the book. It's really to open the mind of people to this strategy that it is possible to manipulate politics by carrying out, very specifically, a terrorist attack in Italy, and then blame it on somebody else. I have to say, there's another terrorist attack in Italy. It was carried out in 1972 in Peteano. Peteano is just a small village. And I want just to run through, readers through that attack. There was a small Fiat 500, which is like a very small car. It was parked there, and then there was an anonymous call to the police, the Carabinieri, and they said, "Why don't you check out this car? There's a car there, and we don't know what it's doing there. Can you check it out?" And people didn't know who was calling. So the police said, "Thank you very much, we check it out." And then they drove there, and they opened the car, and then the bomb went off. So the car, there was nobody sitting inside. It was just a trap, okay? It was a car with a bomb. And the policemen were torn apart. Now, the policemen who were killed, they obviously represent the state, the Italian state. And then there was somebody else calling and say, "This is the communist Red Brigade, you know, we did it." But that was a lie. It was just to make the communists look bad. And then many years went by, and then the real terrorist, whose name is Vincenzo Vinciguerra, he's also in the book.
Yeah.
He came forward and said, "I was the one who carried out this terrorist attack. And, you know, the secret services in Italy knew it, that I did it, and that was from the extreme right. But they wanted to make the communists look bad, so they left me alone. They didn't follow me up." And it was Vincenzo Vinciguerra who then said, at NATO, on NATO level, there is this super secret organization called Gladio. And that was in the 1980s. Everybody was like, "He's got to be crazy, that's a conspiracy theory." And it was actually this right-wing terrorist who exposed NATO's secret armies. So just to explain how delicate it is still today, many people don't want to talk about it. And when I talk about how the war in Ukraine started, which really is a huge tragedy in Europe, I think it's more than 1 million people killed. I don't know. I mean, the Ukrainians, the Russians, they don't give the real figures, so we don't know.
Definitely,
but I think it's more than 1 million people killed. And these are brothers. Ukrainians and Russians are brothers.
Yes.
1 million brothers killed. It's very, very sad. But if we understand this, then we must learn what is false flag strategy of tension. And then we will go to the 20 February 2014 in Kiev. We see it there. And if we go to the Cold War, we see it in Western Europe. And I think it's just our task as historians to help people understand the truth.
Absolutely. And it's very important to try to save the democracy everywhere and to try to save the freedom of speech, which is a huge problem nowadays, as we see what's happening around the world. I would like to come to a little bit more contemporary themes. Like you see the tensions nowadays, and after all, you have researched, although it was the secret armies of NATO. How do you see the future of NATO?
I'm a critic of NATO, you know.
Yeah.
I say I have a lot of talks in Germany, and I say Germany should leave NATO because really what's happening is NATO expansion has angered Russia such a lot, especially the invitation for Ukraine. The maybe just to get everybody
Yeah.
on the same information level. I know you know it, Dr. Sibylov. I'm not saying because of you, but NATO invited Ukraine to become a member in 2008. I think it was in Romania, in
Yes.
Bucharest, the summit of NATO. And it was George Bush then was president of the United States. And he just said, you know, yeah, Georgia can become a NATO member and Ukraine can become a NATO member. And it was crazy. Already then I thought, this is crazy. Russians are never going to accept that. And Russian President Vladimir Putin was also at the conference and he said, no, we don't want that. And in fact, there was a very good American ambassador who was then U.S. ambassador in Moscow. And he wrote a cable, and we have it through WikiLeaks. His name is William Burns. He later was CIA director. And he said, the Russians will never accept Ukraine becoming a NATO member. So, you know, it was known in 2008. It's not like we found out now in 2025. No, it was always the story. And then I think NATO made a big mistake. They just said, we don't care. We're just going to take Ukraine into NATO. And I think that is really the reason for the Ukraine war. And if you understand that this is my reflection, I'm in Switzerland now. Right now, I'm here in Switzerland, Basel, Switzerland. We're not part of NATO. And I tell everybody in Switzerland, don't go into NATO. If you're in NATO, you have to pay a lot of money to American arms companies.
Yes.
You know, you have to buy their planes, you have to buy their tanks, you have to buy everything from them. It's basically a merchandising shop. You just have to buy everything made in the United States. And they tell you it will enhance your security. Then I tell you, look at the map. It is 6,000 kilometers of water, the Atlantic, between Europe and the United States. So if we have a problem here in Europe with Russia, it's our problem, okay? Russia is a European country, Ukraine is a European country, Bulgaria is a European country, Switzerland is European. It's our problem. The Americans, they don't care. They're on the other side of the ocean. It's far away for them. And they can walk away anytime if they're like,
Yes.
oh, I don't want, you know, I'm gone. But we're members. And then I say, I think NATO has not created security. On the contrary, I think NATO has created insecurity in Europe. And it's not only that I criticize NATO, I also criticize, if I may, the European Union. Because, you know, the European Union, first, I thought it's a good idea because the Germans and the French, they were always killing each other in the
Yes.
First World War, in the Second World War. We know it. It's not nice. It's not nice. So the idea was, let's have Germany and France, instead of killing each other, exchanging goods, and both can become rich, and they're then economic partners. And I thought this is a good idea. All of Europe can become rich. We just do business, and it's okay. Businessmen, but not killing businessmen. And then the idea of the European Union was to promote peace through trade. And I get the argument. It's very much the Chinese argument. You know, the Chinese say, let's build this one belt, one road. Let's just get rich all together. The Chinese are very intelligent. Why not? Okay, let's just trade. But, sorry for speaking so long. I want to say that then I saw that the European Union, and Switzerland is not a member of the European Union, sided with Zelensky and against Putin. So they became a partner in this war. And I was going, why? They should help, you know, they should say, let's have a peace negotiating forum. They should invite Putin, they should invite Zelensky, and then they should talk about all the problems and find a solution. But no, they didn't do that. The European Union fully went behind Ukraine. And that is wrong. That is totally wrong. The European Union should have been a force for peace. They were not. And now people realize and they ask, but then what is good about the European Union? They said they will promote peace, and now they promote war. It's exactly the opposite. So it's a real big crisis for the European Union and for NATO, for both, this Ukrainian war.
Definitely. And what do you think about the events nowadays? Because we see that Trump has come to the White House and he said, I'm going to end the war for 24 hours. And he's trying at least to have some kind of solution. Although I'm very skeptical on what will come out from the way that he tries to stop the war. I'm not sure that it would be a permanent solution. It might be a short-term decision and then will end in an even deeper chaos. What's your opinion about it? And on the future of the relations between United States, NATO, and European Union?
Well, my look on the world is like that. We are 8 billion people in 193 countries. And some countries are big, some are small. Like Switzerland and Bulgaria are small countries. No offense. I mean, just we're small. We're small countries. And so you always have to check, am I in a small country or a big country? And I say the big countries are the US, Russia, and China. They're the 3 big countries. I mean, I know the French and the Germans and the English, they were big in old days. But really now the 2 biggest economies are China and the US. It's the biggest economies. And the nuclear powers, obviously Russia has a lot of nuclear warheads. The US has a lot of nuclear warheads. The veto powers, okay, you can include France and Germany. But these countries, they will settle the conflict. So I really like it that Trump says, I will talk to Putin, because Joe Biden, who was 4 years president and really, you know, he always put money into Ukraine, he never spoke with Putin. He never did. That's a mistake. I think it's very important that Washington and Moscow talk to each other. And I think on the battlefield, the Russians are winning. That's, you know, I look every day, what is the battlefield, what is happening? And I see the Russians are winning, they're moving. Some people in Switzerland say, oh, they're moving so slowly. Like they look at the map and they say, I've seen the map a year ago and it looked the same. Like, you know, this is Russian-held territory in the east of Ukraine. And why if they're so strong, why are they not moving very quickly to the capital and conquer the whole country? And I say, wait, that's not what the Russians want. The Russians have one idea. They want that Ukraine doesn't join NATO. And that's their idea. And to achieve this goal, they fight a war of attrition. And the war of attrition is just you kill as many of the other side as you can. It's a very ugly idea, a very brutal idea, but you don't move very quickly. It's no use to move very quickly. You just kill everybody who comes towards you. You kill them, you kill them, you kill them. And after some time, there's nobody left to fight. And that's what the Russians are doing. So they bleed Ukraine. And it's a very brutal thing. And I think it's a question of honesty to talk about it. This is what's happening because people are confused. They look at the front line and they say the front line is moving very slowly. You know, it's like in the First World War. It's like millimeters.
Yes.
So how can one side be so strong? And I say, you look at it in the wrong way. You have to look how many people are being lost. And we don't get the figures. We don't. But I say, my estimate, more than 1 million. And this is the war of attrition. So for the young Ukrainians, for the young Russians, which I think are brothers, it must stop. It's madness. It's total madness. And so I think it's good that Trump and Putin speak to each other. And if Trump stops the flow of weapons to Zelensky, if Trump stops the flow of money to Zelensky, I don't think that Zelensky can hold on. You know, it's not even, it's weapons, it's money, but third, it's communication support. And Trump has always, said, I will talk to Putin. And now I see signs that he drops Zelensky. You know, he's always on his social media. And now he's saying, oh, Zelensky has not even held his elections. You know,
yes,
he should have held elections. And then Zelensky goes, oh, I couldn't hold elections because we're at the war. And then Trump goes, "Well, you're not even the elected president." And this is a sign that he drops him. And my hope, Dr. Sivilov, is that the Ukraine war ends in 2025. It's still going on, but I hope that it will end. Yeah.
But what will it cost for Europe? Because I'm afraid that, you're absolutely right, and we have become the battlefield of the war. Europe is and if you look at the European Union, we are the big losers in this war.
Big losers. We're the losers.
Yeah.
The European Union and NATO are the big losers. And, I already looked at the Afghanistan war. NATO, after 9/11, was fighting in Afghanistan for 20 years. And in the beginning, they came in, and, the French were there, the Germans were there.
Yeah, even Bulgarians were there.
Bulgarians were there, the Italians were there. So all of NATO, most, they all go to Afghanistan. I'm like, why are you going to Afghanistan? We wouldn't want any Afghanistan soldiers in Bulgaria or in Germany, right? So it's a strange idea to go there. People will be angry at you. They don't want you there. And so NATO overthrows the Taliban. And then after 20 years, the Taliban are back into power and NATO loses the war. It really, we never talked about it. Like it was a secret. Like, oh yeah, we lost that war. Oh, let's not talk about it. It's not a nice topic. Let's not talk about it. But this war in Ukraine, NATO will lose it also. And we have to talk about it. It's not like, oh, let's forget about it. Because there's so many changes that happen in Europe. The big change that really happened with the Ukrainian war is that the Russians are now completely distrusting the rest of Europe. And they are with the Chinese. And it's like, how stupid is that? The Russians are our neighbors. We should, I think, when the war is over, and you say, what should happen in stable situation, we should apologize. We should apologize to the Russians and say, sorry, that we said you were evil. It's not true. Like, the conflict is complicated. It started in 2014, and evilness is on many sides. Even when there was a tennis tournament, the Russian flag wasn't shown.
Yes.
It wasn't shown. Or when they had an exhibition of cats, the Russian cats couldn't be.
That's crazy. Yeah.
Totally ridiculous. But I think if we apologize and if we say, okay, we see NATO expansion and we see the Maidan 2014 and we accept Ukraine will not be part of NATO, then in the next step, I'm giving a lot of talks in Germany, I tell them, why don't you repair Nord Stream, okay, and get Russian gas flowing back to Germany? Because German economy is not in good shape,
Definitely.
It's not in good shape.
But do you think
so
that it's
I
possible?
think it's possible.
You think it's possible? I'm absolutely,
I hope,
I'm absolutely sure that it's not, because it would be like suicide for all the politicians in the European Union.
Yes, but some have to go. I mean, some have to go. They can leave. They can leave, and then there's the new crowd.
Yeah,
and then they can maybe apologize. It's like it's very difficult for von der Leyen, for her. But it's also very difficult for Zelensky and for Biden. But they are gone. One of them, Joe Biden, is not here anymore.
Yes,
Joe Biden, he's gone. And if there are other leaders in Europe, they can then build a bridge. Like Viktor Orban, for instance, he could build a bridge because he was always traveling to China, to Moscow, to the US, to the European Union. He was always saying, let's not kill each other in Europe. And then he was criticized. He was like, Viktor Orban is such a madman. He's a crazy man. I thought, no, actually, that's a good idea. We shouldn't kill each other. And so some politicians, I think, can build this bridge. But as you know, now in Germany, there've been elections, and Friedrich Merz will be the new chancellor, and he really hates Russians. He's like, let's send Taurus missiles into Russian territories. He's not a force for peace, unfortunately. So I see what you say. It's a complicated situation, but I think Trump and Putin will put down the big structure And then the Europeans will have to adjust. They will have to adjust because what's the alternative? The alternative is that the French send troops into Ukraine to fight against the Russians. They can do that. They will just be killed.
Yeah.
They shouldn't do it. They just shouldn't do it. The Germans can send troops into Ukraine to fight the Russians. They will just be killed. And the German population is going to revolt. They don't want their troops to be sent to Ukraine. So once we think in a very relaxed and calm way about the peace in Ukraine, we will have to talk about all the mistakes we made. But it's like in a relationship, you know, once there's a big quarrel and everybody insults everybody, and then everybody calms down and it's like, okay, what I did wasn't right, and the other one says what I did wasn't right. I mean, the Russian invasion wasn't right, but the Maidan putsch, coup d'etat wasn't right. And it's, I think, as historians, we can. I know that you know a lot about the coup d'etat in Chile in 1973. Yeah. We can explain to the population that a coup d'etat can really lead to disaster, and this is what happened in Ukraine. This coup d'etat, I think the best guy who researched this is Ivan Kotkanovsky. He's a very good guy. He's in Canada now, but I think researchers understand what happened. Politicians, you're right. Yeah. They don't want to talk about it yet. But researchers understand what happened.
Finally, what's your? Are you optimistic on the idea of the future and that there would be peace in Europe? Because I know you're the head of the Swiss Institute for Peace Research and Energy, and I would not get into deep questions about how do you connect peace and energy, but what's your opinion on the future? Do you think that it's possible to save democracy in Europe and at the same point to have peace here?
I hope, Dr. Sibilov. I hope. You know, I have kids, you have kids.
Yeah.
I think, first of all, we need to have freedom of speech. So it's important that we exchange our thoughts. That we can talk about NATO secret armies, that we can talk about the CIA, that we can talk about the suppression of opinions, and this is happening. But I do think that it is a majority wish of people in Bulgaria, in Switzerland, in Ukraine, in Russia, in the United States, in Germany. There's a lot of family fathers, a lot of mothers, and they want peace. They don't want an escalation of the war, you know, that Ukraine war goes to Poland and then all of NATO is in flames and then the Russians bomb the United States bombs, you know, our mind is very easy to go into a nightmare scenario, okay? But the other side is also possible that we say, let's stop the killing first. And second, let's look at the facts, okay? Let's look at the facts, like the overthrow of the government in 2014. Then historians like we can help, and we say, okay, this and this and this happened. And then it's a moment of, let's admit that we did this. It is always important to admit that covert action operations have been carried out. As long as people say, no, it never happened. There was never a putsch in Chile in 1973 on September 11. Never happened. Well, then you don't get the truth. So in South Africa, it was truth and reconciliation. And I think we need this in Europe now. We need truth and reconciliation in Europe. Russians are Europeans. Ukrainians are Europeans. The French, the Germans. We really need reconciliation. And so it's very much a psychological thing. If we send more weapons or more soldiers or more money, that's not going to help. More people are going to die. That's all. But if we have something like a Russian delegation and a German delegation and a Ukrainian delegation and a Bulgarian delegation coming together, and everybody reflects, like in South Africa, on their own sins. It's really sins, you know, to kill somebody is a sin. And you reflect on why you've done it and where it started for you, then healing can happen. And maybe Europeans never thought that they have to take South Africa as an example because they thought, they're barbarians and we're the high culture. But now it's like that. It's like we need to look at them. And Dr. Sivilov, you said you're a bit pessimistic whether European politicians are ready to do that. I also think we're not right there yet. Many say we don't want to talk about the history, and it just started with the Russian invasion, and the Russians have 100% of the guilt. It doesn't work like that. It doesn't work like that. It has to be that the Russians say we have the guilt for the invasion, which is illegal. It's their guilt. And we have the guilt for the Ukrainians we killed. It's their guilt. But the Ukrainians, they have to say, we have the guilt for the coup d'etat, because it's Ukrainians who carried out the coup d'etat in 2004. So they have to say, that's our guilt. And then the government in Kiev has to say, okay, we killed a lot of people, maybe 14,000 during the Civil War. Our guilt. And then the Americans have to admit their guilt. They have to say, we supported the coup d'etat, and we supported NATO enlargement. And we knew it would anger the Russians. So I think truth and reconciliation is possible. And the Swiss government made a peace conference last year. It was absolutely ridiculous, okay? It wasn't the Bürgenstock, and I'm really sorry to say this, it's my country and I love my country, but it was such a stupid idea to make a peace conference and not invite the Russians.
Yes.
That's exactly how you shouldn't do it. I mean, the Swiss government, Viola Amherd, at the time, she was the defense minister, she just made an absolute fool of herself. And I was going, oh, no, sorry, I don't want to see this. It's so embarrassing. I mean, is this like a man and a woman separate, and then somebody comes and says, I make a peace conference about this couple who is in problem, and I will only invite the woman. The man cannot come to the peace.
Yeah.
You're kidding me, right?
Yes, sadly, but I hope that you are right. I want to thank you very much for this interview. It was really great pleasure hearing you, and I hope that in the future we'll be able to have you on much different topics. Thank you.
Yeah, Dr. Sivilov, I thank you for publishing my book in Bulgaria, and I hope that people who are interested in NATO's secret armies will buy it and read it. And maybe you can have a conference in Sofia one day if people allow it to happen. But I know it's a sensitive topic.
Yeah.
Best wishes from Switzerland to Bulgaria.
Thank you.